Rich and Mike Show, Flagler County's hometown sports show. Here are your hosts, Rich Carroll and Mike Licio.
Yes, it's another episode of the Rich Mike Sports Show. Good Saturday morning, Flagler County. And a good Saturday morning to you, Mike Licio.
Hello, Flagler County. Well, the regular season is over, Rich.
Yep. What a season it was. 2025 WNZF football schedule with the local high school football teams. Matanzas Pirates, FPC Bulldogs. It was a fun season. I just want to start off by saying thank you to all the sponsors, everybody that supported the broadcast this year, both schools, the athletic directors, the coaches, everybody, the PA announcers. It was a fun experience. Everybody had a great time, and you had entertaining football this year. You had a disappointing result last night, and we'll get to the game with the Bulldogs and Fleming Island. And boy, that game for the first three quarters looked like you were going to get a different result. Obviously you didn't get the results you wanted with FPC falling to Fleming Island 26-25. But hey, FPC, they were playing a meaningful football game in the final game of the season on October 31st. So I think that's an accomplishment. I think that every game that you and I broadcasted, Mike, down the stretch was meaningful, and we're grateful for that. So it was a great season, 2025, and most likely we'll get at least one more game with the playoffs, but unlikely for FPC to be in that scenario. So just wanted to take an opportunity to thank everybody involved for helping us make it happen and getting these games on the air in 2025.
Yeah, obviously we don't go anywhere without those people, but we're very lucky that we get to be the voices of Flagler County sports, and the support we get from our sponsors, from the station, from the community. It makes it all worthwhile, and that's all you can ask for, is to have some meaningful games at the end of the year, and that's what we have. And hopefully, like you said, we're going to have one more. That's the hope anyway.
At least.
Yeah. But, tough way to go out for FPC tonight, in a game where they outgained Fleming Island by nearly double. They come away with a loss. They had – and, it's funny to look at the numbers and see that FPC was +2 in the turnover battle, which is something we always, people always talk about. They ran for 246 yards, so they were dominant there. Darius Simmons was very efficient passing tonight, and also on top of that had over 140 yards rushing. And it was just a tough fourth quarter. You look back and, as you said before we came on the air, everything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong for FPC there in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it absolutely did. This was a fourth quarter. The Bulldogs were dominant, as you were alluding to with the stats there. First three quarters just looked fantastic. And then you went into the third quarter with a 2-score lead, and you're saying, well, if Fleming Island can get this closer, we're going to have a game. But if FPC can make this a 3-score game, they're going to be in good shape. And FPC made it a 3-score game. You had Fleming Island turn the ball over twice in that third quarter. You had a brilliant call after a touchdown from Coach Turner to kick an onside kick. So the Bulldogs were rolling. They're up by 18 points going into the fourth quarter. And that lead evaporated with a bunch of different things that happened there. The biggest of which I think was after Fleming Island pulled to within 2 scores on the after their touchdown, the kickoff. It was a short, high kickoff, and the Bulldogs let it bounce. And in came the very talented Sebastian Cruz. That's what his name was, right? He said he's a commit to Rutgers. He was all over the field. Looked like a really good player. And he came out of nowhere off one bounce on the kickoff. And that's a live football, obviously. So you don't want to let it bounce in the middle of the field there. And he came out of nowhere, snatched it up. And you can't advance that ball at that level. So they stopped it right there on the FPC 30-yard line. But if that rule wasn't in place, Cruz has taken that back for the touchdown already. But there's Fleming Island now with the ball down 2 scores with a ton of time left, and they just kept coming. And The Bulldogs offensively were unable to really do anything in the fourth quarter. You had an intentional grounding call. You had that we were talking before the show. You had the shank punt of about 15 yards. So yeah, it felt like everything that could go wrong for the Bulldogs did go wrong at the end there. But they fought to the bitter end, all the way down the field. I think they got the ball to the Fleming Island 40 around there to put themselves in a position for a Hail Mary. Simmons is sacked on the last play, and Ladarius Simmons, a senior, he was absolutely spectacular this season. He put this Bulldog team, on his back last few weeks of the season, and almost led them to the playoffs, where you thought early in the season there would be no chance, but they kept fighting, kept pushing, got some wins, and got their names in the conversation, partly because of the strength of their schedule. But Ladarius Simmons, I was so impressed with his quarterback play this season, his ability to make plays with his legs, his ability to be accurate with the football, give his receivers an opportunity. So I felt for him on that last play when he got sacked and the game was over, and he's a senior, and that's going to be kind of the final chapter there at this level. So you feel for that kid. You feel for the entire team because they fought hard in this game. You give Fleming Island credit. They made a great comeback, down 18 points in the fourth quarter. A lot of media out there thought that this was going to be a blowout. This was going to be an easy game for Fleming Island, but it wasn't. They came in and the Bulldogs were ready for them. Sal Campanella was jumping. You had a packed crowd. It was Halloween night. Everything was going great until that fourth quarter. So, but still, I think just looking at the season as a whole, Bulldogs finished the season at 3-7, and it was a very entertaining season, and they lost some close games. So I think things look promising going forward.
Simmons finishes the year with 741 yards rushing. The last 5 games of the season, 24 for 110 against Fletcher, 25 for 115 against DeLand, 14 for 73 against Yulee, 23 for 115 against Spruce Creek, and then last night, 27 for 149 yards for Ladarius Simmons, who had to fight back from an injury. He was hurt early in the season, so he had to fight back from an injury. And you're right, he took the reins of this team when Caden Birchfield got hurt. Once Ladarius Simmons got healthy, he took the reins of his team. He was efficient passing the ball. He completed 7 passes tonight, but and the defense, I thought it did a good job, but it's hard when you're put in those positions and your back's against the wall so many times. Eventually you're just going to break. And, because none of the 3 scoring drives in the fourth quarter were a total of 110 yards. So it's not like they were putting these long drives on. They just kept getting short fields.
Yeah, they sure did. They kept getting short fields, and I think that you can't put it on any one unit. Some tough plays there on special teams, but it really was a bizarre string of events that led to that happening. So it's just one of those things. Sometimes things snowball, and you're unable to stop it, and and you feel, man, if the Bulldogs would have had 1 more minute, or 2 more minutes on that clock, they would have marched down the field and they would have taken that game back, and they would have ended the season with that W and a better chance at possibly getting into the playoffs or the Invitational. They fell short, but they fell short as Warriors, and they left it all on the field.
And maybe even another 30, 40 seconds to give at least Garrett Tucker a try. I know that that was one of the problems. They had an extra point in a field goal block tonight, so maybe they wouldn't have wanted to take that field goal attempt, but could have put themselves in the position for it just the same. And there's no quit in FPC. I'm looking forward to seeing what year 2 of the Patrick Turner era is going to look like. He took over a team that lost 16 starters from last year, from a 9-win team, including the school's all-time leading rusher, one of the best receivers in the school history, one of the best tight ends in the school's history. no argument, the best quarterback in the school history. So there was a lot of holes to fill. Yeah, and we've talked about again, FPC playing meaningful football. Had coming into this week, we'll see how it shakes out as far as the final rankings coming out next Thursday. But they entered this week with the 19th toughest schedule in the state out of 460 teams.
Wow.
So not 19th in the region, not 19th in the class, 19th in the entire state. In fact, the only school they played that didn't finish with a winning record is University, which was a district game. So it was a tough schedule, and these kids persevered, and just didn't work out their way.
It sure didn't, but hey, like you said, there was a lot of turnover there, a new head coach, and they were still able to be competitive and play a meaningful game on October 31st, final game of the season. Different story this week for the team across town, the Matanzas Pirates. We'll talk about them when we come back after this.
Thank you so much for recommending us to your family and friends. When you need a 30, 60, or 90-minute massage, it's real easy to book your appointment online. MassageByNatalie.org. MassageByNatalie.org.
Strap in, Duval. The Jaguars are gearing up to face the Los Angeles Chargers Sunday, November 16th for our annual Salute to Service game. Join us as we honor and celebrate the brave men and women of our military all game long. Secure your seats now and be a part of the action by visiting jaguars.com/tickets or call 904-633-2000. Let's stand together, Duval.
Rich and Mike Sports Show on November 1st. Mike, the Matanzas Pirates. It was a battle of pirates Thursday night over at the Ship, and man, oh man, the Pirates kept rolling.
Yes, they did. A 41-14 win for Matanzas against Palm Bay. Saw some milestones and some records at the game. Wiley Connor became the first 200-yard rusher in over a decade. Also became the first 1,000-yard rusher for the Pirates in over almost a decade, since 2016. And Cole Walker won over 2,000 yards in the season, the first Pirate ever to do that in the 20-year history of the program. Ladarian Baker became the third Pirate ever to have 1,000 career receiving yards. So it was a really good game. But let's get into the game itself. Matanzas came out, and we've heard, Coach Forrest talk more about balance and getting the run game involved. That they didn't do it as much in the early part of the season, but on the first drive, first 6 plays go to Wiley Connor. He gains 51 yards, and then Cole Walker finds Ladarian Baker for a touchdown pass. Palm Bay responds back. Matanzas gets the ball back. Jordan Schendorf has a keeper for a touchdown to start the second quarter. Yeah, and then Cole Walker found Schendorf again, so he had 2 touchdowns on Thursday night. They forced a turnover. Jaden Dormerville has a fumble recovery, takes it 35 yards for a touchdown. On the next possession, Jaden Dormerville gets an interception, takes that back for a touchdown. Dormerville almost ran a punt back, too. He had the one called back. And then Devin Williams had a touchdown as well. So it was all Pirates. It was 41-7. And our good friend Riley, he's a student at Matanzas. He helps Kevin Lewis with the PA. And he says in the press box when it gets to 41-7, he says, all right, rolling clock time. And Kevin and I look at each other and look at him. And I said, he doesn't know about the 94% rule. Yeah. And, of course, the extra point missed.
Again.
Yes. But, I like I said to Coach Forrest last night, I said, if I told you Cole Walker was going to end up with around 100 yards and in the passing in the game, and you were Palm Bay's coach, you'd probably feel good about it. Walker was 16 for 23. He had 2 touchdown passes, which, by the way, he needs one more touchdown pass to tie the single season record that Ethan DiTilio set back in 2020. And they were doing this without Andrew Bass. They were doing this without Thomas Larawan, who were both out for the game. And, players stepped up. Aiden Honey stepped up with 4 catches on the night. Brady Putis had 3 catches. Schendorf, of course, had 6 and a touchdown. Ladarian Baker had 5 and a touchdown. But it was Wiley Connor, 22 carries, 203 yards on the night. That was the big difference. And that's something that makes the Pirates dangerous in the playoffs because, Wiley Connor is a tough runner. He had a 34-yard run, but a lot of his runs, he's just grinding for 4, 6, 8, 10. And it was a great showing by the Pirates to finish the season. What does it mean? Well, they're 7-3. Fleming Island losing last night would have helped the Pirates a lot. Milton did lose to Pace, so that'll help Matanzas a lot. But, my honest opinion, as much as I'm rooting for the Pirates to make the playoffs, I think more likely they're going to end up in the Invitational Tournament. I think it's going to be tough to jump 2 spots. If Beachside could beat Fleming Island on Tuesday, that will certainly help Matanzas. But I think ultimately they'll be playing in the postseason Invitational. If I had to guess, they still got a chance. I'm not saying they're out of the playoff hunt. I just think that I would say it's about 90-10 that they end up in the Invitational and not the playoff. So the important thing is, and I told this to Coach Forrest last night after the game, I said, you're playing meaningful football in October, and you get the opportunity to play football in November. And he said, as he started talking about the playoffs, and he said, well, how to do a little scoreboard watching tonight. I said, but even that's a privilege. The Pirates have earned the right to be able to watch the scoreboard because they've played well enough. They talked about it the last 4 games of the season that was their playoffs. They needed to win those 4 games to get back in the picture, and they did that. So, as much as it sucks in a way to have to watch the scoreboard to see what this game's going on in the Panhandle, what's going on at FPC, what's going on in Mainland, what's going on up in St. Johns County, the fact that you won your last 4 games gave you the opportunity to do that.
Oh, it sure did. And this was a team that was on a mission this year. A very disappointing open to the season where they lose the Potato Bowl. And I was surprised to hear Coach Forrest say during the broadcast last night, because he did join us during halftime of the FPC game. And thanks again to Coach Forrest being on the broadcast with us. But he said he prefers to have FPC as the first game of the season. And I just, you know how I feel. I'd rather have that game later in the season. I would even rather have it in the middle of the season. But to me, the ideal situation would be to have that as the final game of the season where both of these teams have been through their wars. You know who they are. And I think that's what's going to give you the best game in this kind of, local Potato Bowl championship scenario. That would give us the best game, I think. But the coach prefers that being the first game. And Matanzas lost that game. And I know that they probably felt that was a game they had a good chance to win, especially when you look at the stats from that game. But they fall to FPC first game of the year in the Potato Bowl. Then they roll off 3 straight wins. And you say, hold on a second, maybe something's going on here. And then they lose 2 straight. But one of those 2 losses was against Mainland, and they had a lead at halftime against Mainland. So think about that. Matanzas wins that game, and this is a game where they have a lead at halftime. We all know how huge it would be and how difficult of a chore it is to defeat Mainland. But if Matanzas does beat Mainland, they're district champions. So they have a lead against Mainland at halftime. They lose that game. Then they roll off 4 straight wins, to end. That's a special year for Coach Forrest and the Matanzas Pirates. This is a year that's going to be remembered for a long time, and that's why I think the Invitational is fantastic, because this is a Pirate team that had the type of season where they should be playing for something in November. I know there are a lot of teams out there, so many can make it, right? That's why you have an Invitational for these other teams that, hey, you know what? At 7-3 with some impressive wins in there, the Matanzas Pirates, in my opinion, that is a team that needs to be playing for something. And with their record and the year that they had and the streaks that they went on, they will be playing for something now. So 7-3, an extremely entertaining team to watch. A talent all over the field. You said the names, whether it's Thomas, Larawan, Wiley Connor in the backfield. Cole Walker had an amazing year at quarterback. Ladarian Baker is one of the best athletes I've ever seen. Jordan Schendorf. If I'm leaving somebody out, I'm sorry. But you guys were an amazing team to watch this year, and I'm looking forward to watching at least one more game. So I'm really happy that this invitational exists and the opportunity to possibly call one more game this year, at least.
And I talked about that with a couple players last night. So let's talk about, or Thursday night. The games all run together at some point, but Thursday night I got to talk to the stars of the game, and let's start with Jaden Dormeville. Jaden had a punt return that was called back. Otherwise, if that punt return doesn't get called back, he got called back at the 2. Jaden Dormeville would have had over 200 yards in return yards. He had a big punt return, a 58-yard punt return after it was called back. He had that 65-yard interception return. He had a 35-yard fumble return. So he was really making plays in defense and special teams. And so he was the first person I talked to on Thursday night. Jaden, 2 touchdowns tonight to close out your last regular season home game. Hoping there's going to be more after this. We'll have to wait on everybody else to finish. But how do you put tonight into words?
I'd say just fighting back and giving back to my guys because I had made a couple mistakes, allowed a touchdown, but I told them, Coach, I got you. I'm going to get it back. And I got it back, and I doubled it. Had to show them that I got it in me.
Take me through the fumble.
It was a play, jet sweep, I believe, and he just came. I see my teammate hit him, and I just peanut punched. I was watching it on YouTube all week. I'm like, I got to do this in the game. I peanut punch, and ball rolling, I pick it up. And I just run. I don't care who's around me. I see green grass. I just ran full stride, like track speed. I'm going, keep my head down, and I scored. Got it back, turned it with my guys.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, you had a pick 6 too.
Yes, sir. I jumped on the route. I picked it off. I was tired. I was running. I had to cut it back and just maneuver through traffic. Thanks to my guys for blocking and helping me out. And I was able to maneuver and get in the end zone.
And then on top of that, you were a weapon in the return game tonight. You had a couple of big returns. How close were you on that punt?
I believe 3 yards. Shoestring tackle, just swipe my foot. I tried to dive, but I couldn't get my feet in. So, unfortunate.
We'll see you in a couple weeks, dude.
Yes, sir.
All right, great game from Dormerville there Thursday night as the Pirates defeat Palm Bay, and that's the sign of a good head on the shoulders in these games. Don't let any mistakes you make in the game get you down. Just make it give you a reason to get back up and doing something positive for your teammates, and that's exactly what Dormerville did.
It was a 90-yard touchdown pass he gave up, by the way. I think I failed to mention that. He gave up a 90-yard touchdown pass, but he more than made up for it. And how about this late in the season, he says, I'm out there watching the peanut punch and trying to learn. That's what you want to see. So good. And so the next person I talked to was Wiley Connor, who, again, went over 1,000 yards. He is now the 4th all-time leading rusher in school history and has a legitimate shot next season to become the all-time leading rusher for the Pirates. But he went over the 1,000-yard mark with 203 yards rushing. Didn't get in the end zone, but he paved the way for everybody else to get in the end zone and really put the team on his back for a large portion of this game. Let's hear from Wiley Connor. Big night for you, Wiley. 200 yards. First Pirate to 200 yards since 2012. It seems like as the season goes on, you just get stronger.
Oh, yes, sir. Coaches keeping me in the weight room, getting me ready, and they just keep believing me. The offensive line did their job tonight, and they did. They just keep on working. Got over 1,000 yards for the season. Did you have that number in mind at the beginning of the year? Oh, yeah. Everyone was talking about it. I always wanted the O-line, really wanted it, so I knew I would get it for them. Last home game of the regular season. There might be more coming, but how do you feel about the way the team finished the season winning 4 straight? Oh, yeah, we did great. We were on a roll, and because we knew after that mainland game, we knew we had to win out to have a chance at playoffs, so that's what we did. So after you finally doing it, what's the feeling after knowing what was in front of you and being able to reach that goal of winning the last 4? Man, it just felt great, to be honest with you.
Wiley Connor getting it done, one of the great running backs in the history of the program over there at Matanzas, and he's been fun to watch all year long. You mentioned it. He's quick, but he runs with power too, man, and that's just the type of back you want. And I'm sure offensive linemen, they look at him and they're pulling for him, and hey, go get us that 1,000 yards, and he did it, and that's the sign of a good offensive. And they have had a great year up front there with the offensive line. Great pass protection this year, and obviously great in the run game as well with Wiley Connor.
And Wiley's also a great baseball player for the Pirates baseball program, so a great athlete as well. But when we talk about great athletes and we talk about multi-sport athletes at Matanzas High School, as the Highlander quote says, there can be only one, and that is Ladarian Baker. I was talking to Coach Shoddy on the sideline after the game with Ladarian and his dad, and I said, I can remember standing on the sideline at St. Augustine High School, Matanzas JV, St. Augustine JV. It was my kid's freshman year, and talking about Ladarian Baker, and I said, 27. I said, well, what is it with him? He looks like he should be playing varsity. And Shoddy basically told me, Ladarian just doesn't realize how good he can be. And what he did these last couple of years is he locked in. He locked in on the football field. He locked in on the basketball court. He's now the third all-time leading receiver in school history. And I got to share that moment and kind of talk to him about that moment after the game on Thursday.
Just another night of Ladarian doing Ladarian things. Take us through the first touchdown.
We've been practicing it all practice and executed in the game. So when we watched film and what plays was going around, we know it was going to execute in the game. So practice how you play.
You've accomplished a lot here. You became the third receiver ever to have 1,000 career receiving yards here at Matanzas. What's that mean to you?
That means a lot. I know I've been chasing. That was my goal, to get the most yards in Matanzas history, and I'm still going to get that achieved. And yeah.
And yet, you still on defense, you broke up at least 2 passes that I saw tonight. And I thought you were getting another kick block.
Yes, sir.
You're an important part of this team. You already know that. But, what is it like to know that in all 3 phases of the game that the coaching staff and your teammates are looking to you to help lead them?
It's all about the coaches just trusting me, and I know that the coaches trust me, so when it's time to make a play, it's time to make a play.
You had to. The playoffs began for you guys, according to Coach Forrest, with these last 4 games. You got through those last 4 games. You've accomplished that goal. How does that feel at this point?
It feels good because when we lost to Mainland, we knew we were supposed to win out. So that was our goal. That's what we were looking for for the past couple of weeks, and we did it.
How forward are you looking to put the pads on again in 2 weeks?
Man, I'm happy to put the pads on in 2 weeks, man. I just hope we make it in.
All right, there he is, Ladarian Baker. Man, oh man, he has been a great athlete in both sports and a pleasure to watch. Congratulations on another fantastic season from Ladarian Baker and the Matanzas Pirates. They finished the season at 7-3. Mike, when will we find out what the situation is with the playoffs? Let us know.
Playoff brackets will be announced Thursday at 12. The FIT field will be announced at 2 p.m. on Thursday.
All right, and you'll hear all about it on the Rich and Mike Sports Show next weekend as we gear up for a possible Matanzas Pirate playoff run. Very little time here. I will say, Mike, after your disastrous start, you are within 3 games. I am crumbling. I am collapsing. I'm down to 13-11 on the season. You are 10-14 on the season. I'm, of course, talking about our NFL football picks. Here are my picks for this week. I have the Jacksonville Jaguars -2.5 over Las Vegas. I have Seattle -2.5 over Washington, and Detroit -9.5 over Minnesota. What you got?
I got the Jaguars with you. I've got Carolina +13.5 over Green Bay, and of course I lost where I picked. You've got it written down there.
I have you. All right. What does Mike have? Mike has Indy -3.5 over Pittsburgh, Jacksonville -2.5 over Las Vegas, and Carolina +13.5 over Green Bay. So that's what we got going on with our NFL picks. Once again, thank you to everybody involved with our high school football season. It was a fun year. Congratulations to both teams for playing meaningful games in October. Matanzas, I don't think we've heard the last from you this season. Find out more about that next week on the Rich and Mike Sports Show. Have a great weekend, Flagler County.